Hi, I'm Debbie from Simply Special Crafts. Today we're going to take a look at the Hunky Dory Floral Favorites Designer Deco Large Kit. The Floral Favorites Designer Deco Large Kit from Hunky Dory has 24 topper sets, and Hunky Dory estimates that this kit will make 24 cards. It comes with a beautiful design sheet that has some great ideas for how you can make these cards in a larger style. And they have lots of neat samples here for you. Today, we're going to take a look at doing these cards in two different ways. We'll do one card so I can show you what Hunky Dory has in mind with their Deco Large, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to do them. We're going to make up to 94 smaller cards. This is a card we've prepared using the Hunky Dory method, where we're taking the A4 cardstock, folding it in half, and using that large cardstock, that large foiled cardstock, as our base for our image. I took the base sheet, I loaded all of the toppers they supplied on one sheet. Now you will notice mine is not terribly high, and that's because since I was putting all my layers on one sheet, in order to have this fold nicely or go into a standard envelope for mailing without having to use a card box, I just used 1mm pads between them. You still get a really nice dimension, and you still get all that beautiful layering, but the finished card doesn't end up as bulky. Okay, now let's take a look at doing another set of cards my way. I like to make those toppers go as far as I can, so I'm going to use my own cards, my own card blanks and my own envelopes, and I'm going to make these cards go a lot further. So the first thing that I do when I'm doing this is I try to determine how many cards I can make. And I'm going to make out of this set, I think, 3 cards. I have a beautiful base layer right here on this cardstock. I'm going to use this as a base layer, and I'm going to take this piece right here. It has a nice, fully completed kind of view to it. You can't always do this. Sometimes you just get 2, but in this case, I'm going to get 3. And if I use my papers and inserts, I'm going to get 4 cards out of one set. When you're popping out your extra pieces, one of the things that's helpful to do is to look at the back and see where it's scored. And this actually is a really good example here. See how this one just didn't get clipped all the way? It's good to have a pair of detail scissors handy when you're doing this, in case you have any little spaces that aren't fully die cut. Rather than just pulling that off, I'm going to snip it off, because I'm not going to risk tearing my topper by just pulling it away. I might be able to pull it away, but I'm also taking a risk by doing that. Okay, so I'm going to have 3 sets, I've decided. Those are my 3. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop out my pieces, and I'm going to work from actually the largest piece to the smallest piece. So you'll notice when I'm popping these out, I'm pushing the images towards the front. I really recommend that you do that. I'll show you why. Sometimes when you're working, something will kind of snag a little bit. See how that's just not letting go there? Well, if you have any little snags in your paper, you want those snags to be on the back, not on the front. So by pushing these from the back forward, if the paper lifts, it's going to lift on the back. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to take out all of my little cutouts. Most of the die cutting on the Hunky Dory kits is really, really good, but every once in a while you get one that just needs a little extra attention. So I'm going to take that one. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to take this one. Am I still in camera range, honey? Okay. My honey's here being our cameraman today. Say hi, honey.
Hello.
He loves it when I do that. So I'm I'm just going to choose where those pieces are going to go. So I distributed those 3. Okay, I'm going to take a set of flowers for each. Now this one's going to get chipped a little bit, but that's okay. Take the one that got the biggest card piece last time. I'm going to give it a little smaller one. Distribute these like that. And then we actually have lots of little pieces here. So all I'm going to do is just kind of distribute those out to the different sets. I like where possible to kind of take the pieces that are similar and make sure everybody gets a little piece of that. So I'm going to do this one here, this one here, this one here. I have lots of these pink flowers, so I'll punch these out. I'll give everybody one of the pink flowers. And we have a couple of these, so just pop these out. Everybody gets one of these. This one over here, I can get this one. And I have this little flower. At this point, it's just kind of putting them there, you know, just breaking in between the 3, because all the little pieces that we put on are going to add dimension and depth. But you can see with this that even though I'm going to make 3 cards instead of 1, everybody's actually getting quite a few pieces. Sometimes as I'm putting stuff together, if an area looks particularly flat, you know, I'll rearrange the pieces a little bit between the sets, but it's not rocket science. It's really just picking out what, you know, working from largest to smallest and kind of distributing your pieces. We have this nice sentiment. I'll set that aside. And we've got all those out. Now I'm going to take my sets, work on this one that we're creating. And I'm just going to put this together, working from smallest to largest. I'm going to go off camera for just a moment here and put my foam squares on because you don't care to watch that. Okay, I've got all my foam squares in place, and you can see about how many I'm using there. You know, there's these little bit larger pieces, maybe 6 or 7, just to kind of hold up all the major areas. And now we're going to do some of the fun part. I like this layering job. And we're going to match this up against the images and decide where this piece goes. So find that it goes right here. Now, I mentioned 2 millimeter squares earlier, or excuse me, 1 millimeter squares. I would use 1 millimeter if I were putting all my layers on one card. But where I'm spreading my layers around and I'm building more cards from a kit, I'm actually using 2 millimeter tape for these. I want more dimension from each of the individual layers, so I'm definitely going to use 2 millimeter tape on these. Add a little bit of. Sometimes you got to really look to see where these pieces are supposed to go. It's a little bit like working a jigsaw puzzle. That's good we had a piece to go up there because that was a little flat looking up there. And, oops, let's see. This one goes right here. And this is cruel when they give me a single leaf. It's like, yeah, I'm going to match that single leaf to something. I actually think it goes right there, though. And a flower. And I'm going to assume it goes here on that flower. So see, even though we're making 3 cards, we're getting nice dimension out of those pieces. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other 2. For right now, I'm going to move these extra pieces, just in the interest of time, I'm going to move those extra pieces off. I'll out of my way, and I'm going to cover my card. So I'm going to use a European A6. This happens to be by Paper Mania. We have them by Hunky Dory, by Anita's, by Paper Mania. It happens to be Paper Mania. When supplies come in and something's gotten dinged in the mail, those are the ones I use for my demonstrations. So this happens to, some part of this pack was damaged, so that's what I used for my sizes today. I will tell you that these will easily fit on a USA 2 if you happen to have those cards already. The one advantage of using a European A6 over an American A2 is that these papers are perfectly sized to get 4 pieces out of one sheet of cardstock. That's the one advantage to using European A6 with Hunky Dory as opposed to USA 2. But you can certainly make it work either way, and I think by now you know my philosophy that if you have it on hand, use what you've got. We want to use up those things that are in your craft stash so you have room for new and wonderful things when they come out. So make sure that you just alter a little bit from what I'm doing to use up what you have in your collection now. Okay, I folded my card and I folded it on, I don't know if you noticed that, but I actually folded it back on the valley, and that gives you a nice square fold in most cases. I say in most cases because we've all experienced getting cards that aren't as square as they should be. And now I'm just going to take my sheet of Mary. I'm going to start at my edge, my fold line, and I'm going to put my Mary on. And the reason I start at my fold line is I want to make sure that that fold gets completely covered with my mirror board. If I have anything extra anywhere else, I can trim it off, but the fold you're kind of stuck with. So if in fact I get a little bit of white showing on my fold, I can show you some tricks to deal with that. But where I have just a tiny bit of white showing at the bottom, I can make that go away. And now I'm going to trim this, flip it over, trim it from the back, and I have a nicely covered card. Fast, easy, no measuring. That's a fun way to go. I don't want to spend all my crafting time measuring things. You will have to measure this next piece though. So this card is roughly 4 by 6, but it's actually 4 1/4 by 5 3/4. So if I want my mirror board to show, I'm going to have to cut this down, and I want about a fairly narrow margin on this one. So I want my card to be, I'm going to start with 4 because I can always cut some more off. I'm going to cut my cardstock to 4 by 5 1/2. And here's the question, which part do I want to use? I want to use this piece, or do I want to use this piece? And I think I like it with, even Bryce is here whispering in my ear that he likes the brown part. I like the brown part too. So I'm going to cut, but you always have to stop and look and say, what's going to look the best? I'm going to cut this to 5 1/2 since my card is 5 3/4. And I need to trim a little bit more off my side. So let's trim just a little bit more. There's a little bit of trial and error here, guys, but that's the way of things, you know. You can always trim more, you can't put it back, so I like to start conservatively and work my way around. There we go. I like that border. I think that's nice, so let's go with that. I'm going to I could put foam squares on the back of here, or I could put tape on the back. I'll give you a hint. If you put foam squares, it's easier to line up because if you don't like the way you lined it up, it'll pop back up. If you're using tape, it's a little more difficult to pop it loose. So just for the sake of illustration, let's go ahead and use these foam squares on the back. And I don't need 100 of them. About 9 will hold this really nicely and give me just a nice amount of lift. This could have been a good job for a 1mm square here because I may or may not want it quite as high for my background piece. But we can do whatever we want to do and use whatever you have available. If you have foam squares that are a certain size, I'd say that's the ones you should use. I'm never going to try and sell you everything in the store because my goal is that I want you to be absolutely delighted with what you get. I want you to use what you get, and I want you to feel like you're not wasting anything, that you're having a chance to use up the supplies you get. See, this is a perfect illustration of popping that back loose because my margins were a little bit wide on the outside and not even, so okay, I like that better. Where I trimmed that a while ago, I think that I didn't get my trim quite straight, so I'm going to trim just a little bit more off the bottom just to give me a perfect line there. There you go. That looks a lot better. Okay, now I'm going to take my topper, I'm going to put it on with some foam squares. And look at the dimension we're getting from this card. Even though we are making 3 cards out of this set, we're getting some great dimension. I'm going to pop a few foam squares on here. These 1mm ones are just like, for some reason, just like extra tacky this time, and they're just as apt to stick to my fingers as they are to the card. Just pop these on here quickly. And I want one everywhere that, pretty much on the edges, and 1 or 2, maybe 3 in the middle when we're using a larger piece like this. And peel them. Preferably peeling the squares, or the tabs and not the squares like I just did. One of our customers told me that she'd really rather use tape for her foam than these little squares because she hates peeling all these little boxes. I don't really care. I think it's pretty quick one way or the other, but that's another option. If it really annoys you to peel all these little squares off, you can use foam tape instead of the little squares. Sometimes you can get foam tape in some pretty good sized rolls, and it save you a little money. Okay. I'm going to line that up with the brown on my page. Now, I could put a sentiment on that if I wanted to. I could put a little word. I got some little word stickers usually. Right here. Look at my little words from hot off the press, and let's just make this a for you. Oh, how that just appeals to me this time. Sometimes you have to weed out these little ones just a tad. Sometimes I put them on and then I take the extra pieces out because I find that easier to do. A little for you here. It's pretty straight. And I take my scissor point, pull out the centers of the letters. And of course, just because I'm on camera, it's going to be a little more difficult this time. That's okay. It's good you see I have those troubles too. Okay. There we go. Get the center out of there. Looks like we have a little center in the Y. There we go. Voila! Finished card. Let's take a look at the rest of the set. Let's take a look at the rest of our set here. Here's one that we completed. Once again, we're using it's a US A6. Looked a little smaller, but it wasn't. And I've just covered it in Mirrorboard and done exactly what we just saw. In this case, I've used the pre-printed cardstock and built my layers up on that, so you can see that. But very simple, very straightforward, but isn't it pretty? Look at the layering. Next up, this is made using the Papers and Inserts paper. I had another image that was on the Papers and Inserts. The image on the Papers and Inserts is slightly different than the image that was on the kit, so I couldn't layer onto this one, but I think you'll agree, it's still a really striking card, just using, cutting down my image, putting some Mirrorboard behind it, and putting my happy birthday on it, which this, by the way, is also off of the hot off the press Tiny Words in gold, and I think it turned out really pretty. A little wider borders because I didn't have the layering. I thought it just needed a little something extra, so wider Mirrorboard. Here's that base layer that's been completed. I used the little word thanks on it, and I just used a piece of my cardstock in this case. Layering everything up. These are lined, by the way. In this case, I used a piece out of the Papers and Inserts pack. One thing is that when you make as many cards as we're making out of these kits, you won't have enough inserts to line everything with insert paper. If you want to do that, you may want to get extra inserts. I'm recommending you get 2 sets of inserts to do the 24 card sets. But if you want to have enough insert paper to line every card individually, then I recommend you may even want 3 or 4 sets of inserts. I'm fine with going ahead and leaving a few unlined or using my Trim Me insert papers from Hunky Dory, but we're using, as I've done there, using pieces out of the Papers and Inserts. Now, if you use this Papers and Inserts paper, you might have to write on this with a felt tip pen because it's a glossy paper, and you'll get better results with a glossy than you would with a ballpoint pen on that. But look at this one, isn't that pretty? There we go. These 2 are made on 5x7 cards. The rest were made on A6. And just because I'll be showing you the actual pages from each of the kits, let me take just a moment and run through these really quickly for you. Then we'll take a look at the supplies and move on to our other kits. So we used this topper sheet. Now, take a look here. Sometimes I get calls from customers saying, I think I was shorted because I didn't get 2 of the base layers. Well, actually you are getting 2. They're just printed on the same sheet. If you were buying individual kits, these would be cut and you would have just 1 of these. So these 2 are on 1 sheet. You get 2 of the layering pieces. You get 2 of the cardstocks. And if you buy the Papers and Inserts, these are not included in your kit, but people tell me they like to see what they look like. This is the Papers and Inserts. On one side we have this beautiful bouquet. On the other side we have all these yellow roses. And here's the insert. Because they're because Hunky Dory assumes you're going to make 1 card from each kit, you get 1 insert sheet and 1 Papers and double-sided paper in each card style. That's why I'm saying get 2 of them, because you actually get 2 of everything. And if you're going to make more cards, then go ahead and get 2 sets of these. Before we move into our card samples, let's take a really quick look through our supplies list. You're going to find this is actually a really short supplies list for this set because I don't think that these layered cards need a lot of extra embellishment. Simple, beautiful, the layering kind of carries the day, so I don't think you have to add a lot of extras to them. Now, naturally you can if you want to. You can add rhinestones, you can add ribbons, you can add bows, you can, dress them up even more if you like. You'll see that I've kept them fairly simple because I just don't think they need a lot of extras. I have foam squares. I used 2 sizes. I used 1mm and 2mm. Both of these happen to be 5x5mm. If you like the larger ones, we have those available also. I think I used these sizes on everything. I only used 2 card sizes this time. I used I used Paper Mania A6 card blanks. These are nice heavy 300 GSM cards. GSM just refers to the card weight. That's about 110-pound card. And then I used Paper Mania's 5x7 card blanks. Use what you've got. This happens to be what I used. If you need some, we have these. They're great and they're affordably priced, but you can use what you've got. I used 3 different kinds of background papers actually. I used my 4x6 gold Mary. These are foiled in gold, so I didn't use any silver, I used gold with everything. So I used my Mary stack. I used some of this textured gold that I used last time with the 3D kits. I used some satin papers. Now I will warn you that the bright satins that I took these from have sold out, but we do have satin board available in the double-sided Mary packs. One side satin board, the other side's Mary. I'm going to give you a link to that in the newsletter so that you can still access the satin board if you want. Other alternatives, try pearl papers. You can try the Centura Pearl or any other pearl papers. Regular cardstock even in bright colors would be beautiful with these. So once again, take a look at what you've got. If you need some, I've got some links to some satin board. But take a look at your card stash and see what you've got in bright colors to use. I used a variety of stickers, but I didn't use a lot of them. I will show you the ones that I would recommend having out at your table when you're working. This is hot off the press Dazzles. These are the thin line gold. These we used just a moment ago. These are the tiny words from Dazzles. This one's actually a star form sticker, number 6546, and these have these little chain links. You can see by my leftovers here that the little centers pop out of those, and those are pretty. These, many, if not most of you, probably have these in your stash already because we sent these out free at Christmas time. These are the Sticker King flourishes. Wait till you see how these look on a card. I'm so pleased with these. So dig out those ones we sent you at Christmas time if you haven't used them up already. If you already used those, we have a few more available in the store. Grab some of these. These are spectacular, and what a neat addition to your card at such a low price. So Sticker King flourishes. These are jewel dazzle borders in gold. I pulled these out. I'm not sure whether or not I used them on these cards, but I just wanted to remind you that if you had purchased that 3D kit, you're bound to have some corners, some lines and corners available left over from that. That would be fun with this kit as well. Obviously, I have to have my finger lift tape. This is my favorite adhesive. I seldom use glue. I use finger lift tape for almost everything. And that's my favorite adhesive. I did not make card samples from the Floral Favorites little book today, simply because I already have examples for you to build 96 cards. But if you happen to, or 94 I guess, if you happen to be making cards for bazaars, for charitable causes, for other things where you need a lot of cards, this is just a marvelous, wonderful selection. And you can do the same things with these that we've done with a lot of the papers and inserts. So look to the samples we've created with the papers and inserts to look for ideas in how you can dress these up and use some of these in your card making. You get 144 sheets for about $15, and it's such a good deal. You can get so many toppers out of one set of these. And you'll notice as we were looking through there, or as we go through our selection at least, that some of the images in here are slightly different than the images that we have in our card set. So it would be fun to make some cards using some of these other images as well. I believe there's usually 24 different, there's 24 different images and you get 6 of each. So an excellent deal for the little book. I used a couple other card making basics that you should always have on hand when you're doing your card making. I used my scoreboard for the large card. If you're going to do the larger card, you're definitely going to want a scoring tool of some sort. I used my paper trimmer, and I used a pair of detail scissors. We have several kinds of really nice detail scissors in the store, and I love when I'm card making because I do use my card base to my blank card to trim my papers. I love having a pair of long scissors available. So those are my other card making basics I've used. We've already seen the large card done from this. I want to take a quick look at what we can do in making multiple cards from this set. This one's called Stunning Stargazers. Of course, this is one reason I show you these is because we also have all of these individual kits available as individual kits in our store. So if you buy the singles, you'll get half of this sheet and one each of the other sheets that I'm going to show you. So we've got the Stunning Stargazers. Here's our layering sheet for that. Second one. Here's our cardstock. This is the only kit from which I was not able to get 4 cards using one luxury kit and one set of papers and inserts. I was able to get 3 by using this, the base layer, and this one as a background set, but this is the only kit that I got 3 versus 4 cards in. Here's our papers and inserts. Again, this is a separate purchase from the luxury kit, and there's our insert paper. Let's take a look at the cards we've done and see how they turned out. This is the kind of created base sheet using the one complete layer and a corner off of my cardstock. This is a 5x7 card. I'm actually going to just tell you all these cards are made in 5x7 and European A6 unless I tell you otherwise, because I tried to use just those 2 card bases this time. This is right off of our insert set, or of our layering sheet, and all I've done is just cover my 5x7 with that cardstock, add my layered up piece, add my topper, line it with a corner, done. Pretty. Like this one. And see, I don't think we're lacking dimension in these cards, even though we're spreading the toppers further than they anticipated. Here's another corner off of my cardstock sheet. I've used the border off of my base sheet, and some of my layers just for you. I've foam taped behind this piece, and then of course the foam tape in there. But we get nice dimension and nice layering there. Once again, in this case, the papers and inserts sheet was slightly different than the printing on the rest of the set, so I couldn't put layers on here, but I created some dimensional effect by first matting my A6 card. I happen to use kind of an orange satin card. I cut this slightly smaller to allow myself a mat there. I put my Just a Note up on some foam tape. Those of you who have watched a lot of our videos know what this is. This is kind of a found piece of trim. Often in the layering sheets and in the base sheets, we have these little pieces that are intended to be throwaways, like this piece right here. You would normally just punch out the other pieces and throw this away, but don't throw those away until you're done, because that's the piece right there that we used at the bottom of our card. And I think this is just beautiful. You got the beautiful rich foiling on both sides, and you can really use a lot of those trim pieces, so don't throw these outside trims or the trim pieces between the elements away until you're done with your kit, because lots of times you can use those. Lined it with a piece of insert. I had extra messages left, so I stuck a message on the inside of that one. That's it. Okay, next up we have the picturesque poppies. Here's our base layer again. 1 in the single kits, 2 in the luxury kit. Here's our layering pieces. Got 2 of those. Here's our cardstock. We got 2 of those. Here's the papers and inserts pack paper, the double-sided paper. That's pretty. And we have the insert. Let's take a look at our cards. Okay, let's start with this one. This is actually, the first one I've chosen here is actually off of that papers and inserts. It's the corner off of that. I've cut a square that's slightly larger so I could mat that onto my orange. I have used the top of that cardstock sheet so I get that pretty layering there. And actually, I believe, yes I did. I actually cut this piece from here, but then I brought this piece up from the bottom by trimming a little bit off here, and then I brought that brown up because I felt like it was a little empty on the bottom compared to the top. So I brought that brown up, and then I used that border piece in between to tie everything together, but I think that turned out really pretty. Actually, I didn't. Yeah, there we go. It's what I cut right there. So I didn't even actually do anything extra. I just took it right out of the middle there. And then used my border, put my wishes, wishing you the very best. And I think this card's beautiful. On the inside, when I got down towards the end of my project, I didn't have a lot of paper left. And I didn't have a large enough piece of my papers and inserts to do my card liner, so I used a piece of my satin board on the inside and created a border so I could make my papers and inserts fit this 5x7 card. I love this card. I think it turned out really pretty. Okay, next up, this is one that I did that with. I knew there was one that I moved up the card. This is one where I have taken this piece and then I brought the lace down. That's what I did. I knew there was one that I did something special with. I cut it right here and then I brought this down and matched it, and I used a border sticker right there to hide my joint. But I like the way that turned out. And then I just added this border strip at the bottom just to kind of tie those together. But isn't that pretty? I've covered my A6 with my orange and then layered everything up on top of there. I wanted to do one to show you don't necessarily have to have cardstock in the back. And so this one I just did on orange, I happen to have used satin board. If you have that available, that's great. If you don't, you can use Mary. You can use plain cardstock. I've used 2 of my trim strips here just to kind of pull everything together, and I love that with love at the top. Here's the large topper that they provided, the base layer. And what I did on this one is I covered my background with the back of that Papers and Inserts paper, which I will grab if I can put my hands on. There we go. I covered that with this. I built my base sheet up and put my corners on a piece of orange. And then I put my banner across and put the whole thing on top of that background. I was looking for something to break up these flowers from that background, because if you put this topper directly on that background, it's just too much activity. But it turns out really pretty if you can break that with a solid color. So here's a good job for a piece of solid color cardstock or Mary or some other material in a solid print. That's a good way to be able to tie together with those bright print backgrounds. I used a little one of my my jewel dazzles down the side. It's possible, I don't remember, but it's possible that I didn't like the way this looked along the border, and that I put that on there. That's a great way to hide any imperfections. That's it for the puppies. Next we're going to take a look at the Perfect Petals. Here's the base layer. Look at that beautiful lavender / blue background and those pretty flowers in the foreground. I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much for all that you do. Nice trim strips here. They say sent with love on your special day. And I always think it's fun when they give us these corners to see what we can do with those. Here's our layering sheet. Some nice big images, some nice small pieces to distribute those around. Obviously we have 2 of those. Here's our cardstock. That pretty mottled color in the background. Very pretty. Here's our Papers and Insert paper on the back of that. And here's our insert. Let's take a look at our cards. This time I'm going to show you more than 3 or more than 4, because I actually did 2 of these kits. Here's one where I've taken a 5x7 card and I've covered it in that gold textured paper. Just put on a border, and then I added my corners and my archway to that, and it just didn't need anything else. It was just really pretty just like that. Could have put a sentiment here if I'd wanted to. Lined it with a matching insert. Beautiful. Here's the second one of those arches. This time I did not choose to use the corner pieces. And this is sent with love. Thank you so much for all that you do. I've actually covered my 5x7 in my solid purple. I've used a couple of my little hearts off of my tiny words. They have some little embellishments on there. And then when I did this one, I actually slid this topper, this sentiment, right up on top of my topper a little bit, because it just fit the card better to do that. And you can do that. You can overlap those pieces a bit. This one's online because it's the second one that I did, and I only took 1 set of Papers and Inserts out of stock because I wanted to make them available for you. Okay. This one I've taken that corner piece, cut it down, I've mounted it. I told you I only used 2 kinds of cards. I lied. I just realized that I actually used some A2 black cards and some 5x7 black cards that I had left over from the last video. So these will also be on the supplies list. This was a USA 2. I have cut a piece of satin board that was slightly smaller to create my background, and layered my layers up on there. Just added a thank you. And in this case, you can't tell that I did that, but I had my gold tiny words here. I used a Sharpie marker to change to thank you from gold to black because I thought it was particularly pretty. And I changed one of those hearts from gold to black with my Sharpie marker to just kind of carry through that black theme. That's going to be really important with your black cards that you line them, unless you're going to use like a metallic marker or some kind of pencil or marker that writes on black. You're going to want to line your black cards. Here's my papers and inserts image, and I've just taken my A6, cut it, matted, or covered my card, created this one slightly smaller so I have that gold mat, added my border on your special day. I lined it with a piece of leftover papers and inserts. I actually think this might be from a different kit. I made this to a fabulous friend and used a piece of border from one of the other kits. Here's one that I've just stacked right on top of my mirror board, and I think it actually turned out really pretty. I covered my A6 card in mirror and just popped my topper right on top there, and then I moved my sentiment up onto that topper just a little bit so that I had a nice border all the way around, but I think that's really pretty. Another A6 card. Here's a place where I've used one of those leftover, in fact I've used two of those leftover pieces, here and here, and other than cutting my cardstock down to allow my gold mirror board to show, those are the only additions I've put on here, but I just wanted to add just a little bit of extra something, and I used those throwaway pieces. Finally, here's the first of our cards. We're using those flourishes from Sticker King. Again, just covered in gold, Mary, and cut my cardstock down to allow a border all the way around. The only thing I've done is add this beautiful flourish off of that Sticker King sheet. And isn't that gorgeous? This is one of my favorite sets from this collection. This one's called Pretty in Pink. There's our base layer. Happy birthday to a wonderful friend. Here's our layering pieces. Here's our cardstock. Isn't that pretty? Oh my gosh, it's pretty. Here's the double-sided paper. And here's our insert. Let's see what we did with them. Here's our first one. I've covered my 5x7 card with that piece of cardstock on the side. I've put my base sheet up on some foam squares. Done. That's all I did. Oh, I added this little with love. But it's just so pretty. It just didn't need anything else. Lined it with a piece of my insert paper. This was kind of fun. This was just different. I just got a hankering to do something a little bit different. So in this case, I've taken my 5x7, I've covered it with the back. Yeah, it is. It's the back of that papers and inserts. This print is kind of wild when you look just at the print, but when you use it as a background behind some rather solid sheets, it's beautiful. So that's how I recommend using those really bold patterns like that. So I've covered this with my double-sided paper. I cut my mirror and my card to roughly the same size, and then I staggered the two of them. I put my label here. If friends were like flowers, I'd pick you. And I added a gold thin line dazzle down the edge. That's all it needed. Just so pretty. A pretty piece of insert paper inside. I love this card. This may be one of my favorites from the entire collection. Okay, here's a piece of my, I believe this comes off the double-sided paper. Yeah, it does. Here's a piece of my double-sided paper right here. And I've just layered my topper on there, my layered topper, and put a little just for you. That's all it needed. It's just pretty. In this case, I've chosen to use a really, really thin, like 16-inch or a 1/16 of an inch border with my mirror board. That's really, really thin, but I just like the way that it looks, so I went with it. And here is the corner of my cardstock. My cardstock. And yeah, this is the cardstock. Now I wanted to mention in this one, I couldn't layer, no, that's not the cardstock. This is the double-sided paper. I couldn't layer on it because it was different. The pattern is slightly different than the layering pieces, so I didn't put any layering on it to give it a little bit more dimension. I've done a couple things. One, I used a piece of my border and just a little bit of mirror board in between there just to kind of give that a little bit of dimension, a little bit of pop. Celebrate It's Your Special Day is up on some foam tape. And then you can see what I've done here. I actually cut this away. I cut my cover away and I put my border strip on the inside. And I think that's a pretty look. There we go. This next bright, cheery topper set is called Sunflower Surprise. And we've got these square toppers in this case. When I see square, I almost inherently go to a square card. But again, just kind of holding with my philosophy that I wanted to try and stick to the 2 card sizes if I could. I've done these on 5x7s. We've got Celebrate Your Special Day, Happy Birthday from me to you, with love, Be Like a Sunflower, Always Turn Your Head to the Sun. And then we've got Birthday Wishes border down the side. So we've got base layers, we've got the layering pieces. We've got, that's our insert, guess I'll show it early. Here's our 2 cardstock pieces, and then this is really a pretty big image this time on the papers and inserts. We've got the big image and these bright flowers on the back. Let's see what we did with those. Here's my first one. This one's actually using that big piece from the from the papers and inserts. I've mounted it on a piece of mirror board, slightly larger. I covered my card in a solid color, in this case kind of that teal sort of satin paper. And I've added my Just For You. Then I hope you can see them on camera, I have those 2 beautiful flourishes off the Sticker King flourish sheet. That is just really such a spectacular sticker. I love those. It just gives a beautiful finishing touch. Inside I put those bright sunflowers because that's what I had available to line up with. I have a friend for whom this will be perfect. She will love that. Okay, here's the square base sheet. I've covered my card in kind of a bright pink and cut my cardstock slightly smaller to allow that border to show. I've put my base sheet and my sentiment up on some 1mm foam squares so they're lifted but not lifted a great deal. I added my border strip down here, Birthday Wishes, and then I just wanted just a little something extra, so I used 2 thin line stickers, one above and below the sentiment, and I thought it had a really nice finished look. Okay, on this one I've just taken my corner off my cardstock. I mounted it on a piece of teal, then I mounted that on gold mirror board. Celebrate Your Special Day. Didn't need anything else. Nice insert. And finally, this time, got a little wild and creative. This one I've covered in orange. I used one of those throwaway border pieces at the top. I mounted my topper directly onto my mirror board and put my sentiment right on the mirror board. It's bright, but it's pretty. Added a piece of my insert paper. Done. This has been part 1 of the Floral Favorites. We've done 6 card kits here. Each of the 6 made an average of 4 cards. I think the only one we didn't get 4 from was the Daylilies kit. We got 3 from that. So 6 cards, 24. That would mean that we would get 46 cards from the first 6 sets. We'll be back to do a second video with the second 6 cards. Just in the interest of your time, we wanted to break it into a couple of different sessions here. That we're from Simply Special Crafts. If you're enjoying these videos, please like our video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would love to have you as a regular viewer, and we'd love to have you as a customer. If you sign up for our newsletters, we will send you a supplies list of all the supplies that we used in our video and the links to where you can get those products. You can sign up for our newsletter at www.simplyspecialcrafts.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and there's a sign up link for our newsletter. For now, I'm Debbie. This is from Simply Special Crafts, and we'll see you soon.